Allow me a moment of your time to tell you a brief story of 4-year-old Alex. I started gaming at the age of 4 on our expensive Sharp 19SV111 TV, which had an NES built into it, which, by the way, would go on to last me a whole 12 years after the fact. Mario and Ninja Turtles were the only games I would play on it again and again. That was until Sega entered the picture and hit us with their small blue mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. Of course, 4-year-old me loved everything about him. He was fast, cool, but most importantly, he was blue. Blue being one of my favorite colors. So of course I had to have it, and once I got my hands on it, it was history from that point on, as Sonic would go on to be a huge part of my gaming life until now. And it's been a roller coaster of emotions ever since. That is, until a little game called Sonic Mania came and made a concrete statement about what a Sonic game actually is. Sonic Mania is a game that combines some of the best elements about a Sonic game and adds a unique spin to it. And this is shown within the very first zone, which is an almost like-for-like recreation of the Green Hill Zone from the original Sonic the Hedgehog, but then adds its own twist should you wish to explore the wider expanse of the level itself. And this is a common occurrence throughout the game. While there are plenty of unique and new levels from the ground up, such as Studiopolis and Press Garden for example, Sonic Mania isn't afraid to bring back a few fan favorites such as Chemical Plant from Sonic 2 and Stardust Speedway from Sonic CD. And while these levels remain almost 100% accurate, with a few twists to them to make them unique, this logic only applies to the first act of these zones. The developers have made sure that the game remains fresh by making the second act of each zone entirely different from the previous. Not only with additional gameplay elements, but also in visual acuity, as each act is artistically distinct from the previous, with remixed music to boot, bolstering the idea that Sonic Mania isn't just a regurgitation of the best elements of the classic 2D games, but also capitalizes on its own unique ideas by doing things that the original 16-bit era games simply couldn't at the time. Let's talk a little bit about those technical and visual aspects. With comparison, some people may notice that the game seems to animate very smoothly. And there's a reason for that, as each sprite in the game has been redesigned and also had more frames of animation added. The result of this being things like Sonic's running animation looking smoother than usual on a side-by-side comparison. Another thing to note are the special levels that take a page straight out of Sonic R, where it's entirely 3D, combining both Genesis and Saturn generations into one game. Albeit the special levels can be somewhat frustrating in terms of controls. But another thing to note here that really puts the replication of the era into perspective is the art itself. Colors simply pop and everything seems bright and pleasing to the eye, even in the most dangerous of locations. To the point where even if someone didn't really know what a Sonic game was, the footage alone would be enough to turn heads. This, coupled with a pretty great soundtrack, is very evocative of a time where Sega's games were well known for their speed, colors, and music. Something that the company has greatly stepped away from over the past decade. The soundtrack does a fantastic job of trickling in tunes that are very reminiscent of the early to mid-90s and much of the pop culture music of the time, with some nods to a certain pop culture icon that influenced many generations to this day. The track from Mirage Saloon Zone Act 2 being the perfect example of that. With this faithful recreation of classic 2D Sonic comes the challenges that the previous games faced at the time. And while Sonic Mania nails the physics of a Sonic game with momentum-based traversal, it suffers from the same caveats as its predecessors, such as moving so fast that the game can't stream in proper collision detection fast enough, and I found myself dying for reasons unexplained. But overall, Sonic Mania manages to revive a franchise once thought lost to greed and anime edgelord nonsense, and answers the timeless question, was Sonic ever good? By managing to garner interest and praise from fans and non-fans alike. There's a lot to love here, and as an old Sonic fan, it revitalized my hope that good Sonic games are still possible in the right hands, which helps put Sonic Mania in the 4th spot of the best games of 2017.